Okay, so we just got done talking about some basic terminology, some basic definitions of geometry to help us get started with trigonometry, especially talking about angles. Now, one of the things to keep in mind is that when we're talking about angles, we do a lot of rotating. So when we talk about an angle, we typically look at this as being in standard position, right? And when we talk about the rotating, if we go all the way around and make one complete rotation, this is going to be 360 degrees. Okay, you might say, why 360? And we can always blame the Babylonians. They used 360, and that's just kind of what stuck. Okay, so 360 degrees is one complete rotation, which means that 1 degree is 1/360th of a rotation. Now, for most of the things that you would ever use, getting as small as 1 degree is probably going to be good enough. But sometimes we need things to be a little bit more precise, especially when we're talking about locations, if we're talking about latitude and longitude, if we're talking about aiming. Sometimes degrees are good enough, but sometimes you need something a little bit more precise. So with that, we also talk about minutes and seconds. So when we talk about minutes, so a minute is going to be written like this, using a little apostrophe. And when we talk about seconds, a second is going to be written like this. So 60 minutes are in 1 degree, and 60 seconds are in 1 minute, which by default means that 3,600 seconds are in every degree. So it allows us to really fine-tune things whenever we are trying to come up with these measurements. So you might see something written kind of like this, where it might be at, say, 27 degrees, 15 minutes, and 47 seconds. So first of all, know you got 360 degrees for the entire rotation, and each degree is broken down into 60 minutes. Each minute is broken into 60 seconds, which, thank goodness we have that connection with time, so it helps us make a little bit more sense out of it. All right, now, when we are talking about angles, we want to talk about how we can categorize angles based on the measurements. Okay, so before we really get into this, there are some Greek letters we're going to be using this semester, and one of the main ones is going to be this guy right here. So this is the Greek letter theta. So in math, this is like one of the default variables, one of the default symbols that we use for measuring, for representing the measure of an angle. So, keeping that in mind, if you have a measure that is in between 0 and 90 degrees, so again, I'm using theta, that's this guy right here, I'm using that as our angle measure. If it's in between 0 and 90, then we have what's called an acute angle. If your theta is exactly 90 degrees, we have the classic right angle. And if our theta lies between 90 and 180, not including either of these, then we have what's called an obtuse angle. And finally, if our theta measurement is 180 degrees, then we have a straight angle. So think about it like this. If I just draw a straight line like this, right? What would be the measure of the angle? Let's identify a vertex right here. That way we're not getting thrown off. If I rotated it over here, you can see that we're going halfway around a circle, halfway around one rotation. So that's going to be 180 degrees. Thus it being a, what we call a straight angle. It's just a line, right? Now, if I scroll down a little bit here, if I draw this, actually, you know what, let me just kind of clean this up a little bit. You don't need to see that. There we go. So this guy right here, where it, remember the word perpendicular? A lot of times you'll even see this little symbol inside here that indicates that you have 90 degrees. And this is what we call a right angle. So if you have something that is more than that, that's going to be obtuse. If it's somehow less than that, more than 0 but less than 90, then we have something that is going to be acute. Okay. So again, just be aware of this. So when I say a right angle or something that is acute or obtuse, you know what we're talking about. And I think for most of us, it just takes practice getting used to saying those words and knowing what those definitions are so that, when it's brought up in a normal conversation in our trig class, it makes a lot more sense. Okay. One other thing. Something special, and I'm going to tell you a very embarrassing story from whenever I took geometry a long, long time ago. My teacher told us to study. And I thought, I got this. I don't need to study. Well, I got a 40 on a quiz because I wasn't studying. And this is the stuff that I missed. So if you have two angles, and let's just call them 1 and 2. So if I have something like this, so the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2. If this equals 90 degrees, then we would say that angles 1 and 2 are complementary. I got this question wrong on a quiz. It's embarrassing. Now, if I say that the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 is 180 degrees, then that means that angles 1 and 2 are supplementary. So these are the key words for you. These will help you fill in the blanks, right? Complementary and supplementary. I don't know how in the world I missed this. Here's a little mnemonic, little trick to help you remember. Remember that 90 degrees is less than 180 degrees. Hope you can agree with that. And alphabetically, complementary comes before supplementary. So that's what I use in my mind to help me remember which one is that. I know one adds up to 90, one adds up to 180. So complementary is alphabetically before supplementary, 90 is before 180. Now, in the next video, we're actually going to do some problems using numbers and really doing some math. So it's going to be fun. So stick around.